kick off the panel. Thank you guys so much for coming. Did everyone get a sandwich? Arnold Palmer, the iced tea with the lemonade. Y'all good? So this is really informal. If you guys want to grab something during the panel, get up. We're informal. Take off your jackets because it's hot, but it is going to get cooler because we put the word out to turn it down. I'm Liza Sherman. I run the Opportunity Youth Program here at Delgado. We are funded by the Conrad Hilton Foundation to serve students 16 to 24 years old who want to go into hospitality, nursing, and allied health careers. We have our flyers out there as well as our stress balls. So feel free to grab one, please. And the whole impetus for this panel was myself and Mr. Bruce and Ms. Simone. So we're the Opportunity Youth Team along with Ms. Carlalis and Elisa, who are with Children's Bureau. We have an MOU with Children's Bureau to provide mental health services. And we've gotten students who have dropped out of school because of domestic violence situations at home. We've tried to help them. You know, we've reached out. I met Judge Zainey, who is our moderator, trying to get a spot for this student. He got her one, and she didn't take it. And I really think that it was because of fear of the unknown, of going into uncharted waters. And so what we wanted to do today with this panel is kind of lay out a roadmap of what do you do when you or a loved one is in a situation? What are the resources out there to help? What's the legal process, to get restraining orders? How does it work? We also are super lucky that I cold emailed Dr. Trashanda with the New Orleans Family Justice Center, and they're like kind of the touchstone for people that are experiencing domestic violence in New Orleans. They do intakes, public housing, all that stuff. And then I got put in touch with Michael Groetsch by Judge Shea, Judge Mark Shea, who Judge Zainey had asked to do the panel. He's been incredible, helped me co-organize. He's a published author on domestic violence and was a probation officer in Orleans Parish for years. And then he turned me on to Joe Ballanco, who's a social worker who works with perpetrators. So we have an incredible lineup of resources here. I'm gonna let Judge Zainey take it over, but I'm so glad you guys all came. And we will be sending out the video of this panel if you signed up on the sign-in sheet with a legible handwriting so I can read your email. So we want to have a multiplier effect and really put it out there in the community, not just for the people here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Liza. And actually, Liza stole all my thunder because I was going to say basically what she said, but she did it a lot more eloquently than I did. I'm just going to read one paragraph, which is what this is all about. And I do thank Liza for the opportunity for all of us to be here today. All the panelists are going to be heavy hitters. They're the experts in the field. I'm just the one that's sort of the timekeeper. So with these guys and gals, please listen closely. As Liza said, she and I met. She had some concerns about a student, and she contacted me, and we were able to help out a little bit. Please, and it's all confidential, if you are, and I know we're talking, I know in this room are advocates, I know in this room are possible victims of domestic violence, please reach out. That's so important. There are so many resources. It's a shame that it didn't work out for the person that Liza was trying to help, but as she just said, the fear of the unknown. Well, this is the known right here. Please, and if you are a victim of domestic violence, let Liza know. She'll get you in touch with the right people, okay? Or maybe reach out to one of the panel members directly as well. Or even if you're not, and hopefully you're not, but if you know somebody who might be a victim, okay? Let us know about it. Because if nobody talks up for them, it's going to continue. It's not going to go away, okay? So the only way that we can stop the cycle is by helping them eventually help themselves. But sometimes people just need a whole lot of help. And when you hear what each of our panel members have to say and about their different backgrounds and what they do, you're with the best of the best right now. So please feel free to reach out. I'm just going to read the first paragraph of what this is all about. Liza prepared this. In an effort to empower Delgado students to achieve the dream of graduation and job placement success, Delgado continuously strives to remove barriers to excellence and promote student retention. Domestic violence is a recognized deterrent to pursuing education, which is the impetus for this panel. That's it in a nutshell. We have tough enough lives and tough enough school life, okay, to have impediments like something like domestic violence. You're not alone unless you choose to be alone. But I know a lot of it deals with the lack of trust, okay? You gotta trust somebody, and that's why we're up here to hopefully gain your trust. I was going to introduce briefly the panel members. I'm not, because I did that already. But let me start, and we'll start with Mike. Just briefly, again, give us everybody your name and your background and basically what your line of work and what your profession is.
I'm not going to use the microphone because I see we don't really need to. I'm going to just sit here and relax. But what I'd like to say is Mark Shea, Judge Shea is here today. His father, Judge John Shea, was my mentor for 30 years. He was like my second father in life. And fortunately, Mark Shea kind of took over after John retired. If it wasn't for Judge Shea, John Shea, the probation department would never have evolved that I administered back in 1980. John saw tremendous need to have somebody in the courtroom to handle cases, particularly cases involving domestic violence. He knew that was primary. So he had legislation passed, he created us, we created the domestic violence court program, which was really one of the first domestic violence court programs in Louisiana. It probably was the first. I had a 40-year tenure. I think, John, your father, retired after 30?
30.
And I stayed there for another 10 years, I believe. But I had a 40-year tenure. The frightening part of those 40 years, we handled probably over 50,000 perpetrators of domestic violence. 50,000 in 40 years. And that's pretty accurate. And we assisted in protecting and doing whatever we could do to help 50,000 plus victims, because some of the cases have more than one victim. What's really distressing, when I do my research, I look at statistics then, now, and in between. During the 40-year tenure I had in municipal court handling these cases, they had 50,000 plus women murdered by predators, perpetrators, dangerous men across the nation. 50,000, that's the same. So that means for every woman we protected, one died in America, during those 40 years. And if you look down here, when my kids were young and I was doing some training, I asked Joshua, my oldest, I said, put red dots, 50,000 of them, on the map to just illustrate during that 40-year period how many women died. So each one of those dots represents a good person, a real person. And I'm a strong believer, women's lives matter, and it's our position, if we have any authority, to see that they're protected. So anyway, that's my introduction, and appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trashanda, and I am the Executive Director of the New Orleans Family Justice Center. Just a little about my background. I'm a born and raised New Orleanian. I attended Xavier University. I moved away to San Diego for graduate school. While I was there, I decided that I definitely wanted to come back home and do some work in my community. So after graduating, I moved back home and I started working with the district attorney. I was the director of the Victim Witness Division. During that time, I came across many survivors and some victims and deceased victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, stuff like that. After his administration was up, I started doing some work with adult education. And I came across a person who really needed some assistance, and I didn't know what assistance there was out there, so I started doing some research, and that's how I found the New Orleans Family Justice Center. So I recommended that she go over there, and she was overwhelmed by the assistance that she received. I started going back and checking on their board and just reading up about the New Orleans Family Justice Center every chance I got. And when the position became available, I decided to apply for the agency, and I was hired there. And after being there for a couple of years,
Mary Claire Landry, who was the former executive director, she retired and I became the executive director. I always knew that there was some more work that I wanted to do in this area because I had a passion, especially after one of my best friends was, she was killed by her husband, strangled, and killed. And so that has always bothered me, and I just wanted to do more. So working for the New Orleans Family Justice Center has given me the opportunity to help a lot of survivors of domestic violence. So that's how I got to this position and where I am today.
Yes, thanks. Judge Shea.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Shea. I'm a municipal and traffic court judge. I started out as a traffic court judge in '09. Prior to being elected, I was a public defender in the municipal and traffic building from 1984 to 2007 when I retired to run for judge. In '17, I became a municipal and traffic court judge, and at that point had the opportunity to oversee municipal cases, which included domestic violence cases. Now, we in our court are at the mercy of the district attorney, because lately you may have seen it in the press when when DA Canizero was prosecuting, he got in a disagreement with the city council over finances. He took the DV cases in the criminal court, moved them back to the municipal court, took them back, and so they currently are in criminal court where they're being prosecuted. We are talking with current DA Jason Williams about moving the domestic violence cases back to municipal court, where we as 7 judges are better suited to handle those cases. We can get a case to trial probably within 30 to 45 days, where Judge Lombard is the only one that's trying those municipal DV cases. She has a backlog of some 500 to 600 cases, so you can imagine some of those people are awaiting in jail, and that's why our population is growing. But still, I think it's not just the defendant, but it's also the victim, because a lot of times they want to get their case heard so they can get whatever protections through the court are necessary to protect them, not only them, but their children as well, too. And so what a lot of people forget about is domestic violence just doesn't affect the woman, and sometimes the man. We do see that the men are battered in some cases as well, too. But since this is mostly a predominantly female audience, I'll talk about that aspect of it. But that does happen. And but what a lot of people don't realize, that this rainwater effect, it affects not only the woman herself, but their kids, domestic violence, parents, aunts and uncles. So, we as judges can rely on the professionals to give us advice as to how to proceed, because we don't actually interview the batterers or the victims. We just respond as to what their recommendations are. And so that's why it's important for us judges to have this panel of people to my left and right that give us sound advice about whether this person is a situational batterer or a serial batterer, and we can accordingly set the parameters of what, if in fact they're found guilty or plead guilty, as to what this sentence. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I appreciate the invite being here, giving you some insight as to what we do as judges and how we go about handling a DV case. Thank you.
Joe Ballanco.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Ballanco. I'm a licensed social worker in Louisiana. And my history of social work is in the school system, high school, primarily high school, Ballanco High School. And I kind of fell into domestic violence, working with perpetrators. It wasn't an intent. It just kind of happened. And the reason behind it happening for me is I began to see so many of my students that were that little silent victim of domestic violence, and that's what I do with children. Very rarely do we address children in domestic violence. I'm a child advocate. That's how I can work with bad boys. And people look at me and they say, "Oh, God, how do you work with those men?" Well, those men are human beings. They're violent. And most of them it's learned behavior from when they were kids. So they don't get out of the loop. They can't step out of their loop. And a lot of the women, they love their battles. A lot of them depend on them economically. So it's a whole cycle of reasons that I've plunged into this. I've been working in domestic violence for more than 30 years with men. I've worked with the women. We're pretty violent too, but we don't have enough referrals to have an effective group for women. So that's women battles. So that's what I do. And I have a fairly decent feeling that the guys get some help if they are not sociopaths. We do get a lot of those, so they're pretty much beyond any kind of help unless you can get to them cognitively, which you'll never get to emotionally. All about power and control. And kind of like the same thing when you tell your child, turn off the TV and do your homework, and they ignore you. And you said, hey, but I said, turn off that TV, let's get your homework done. And they just continue to watch the TV. Then you're gonna stand up, and then you're gonna walk over to them, and then you may aggressively turn that TV off, and you're really, really angry because they're not listening, and you're not getting what you want. And the minute those kids go to the table, start doing their homework, what happens to your anger? It goes down. Because you got what you wanted. And it's the same way with male battles. No different. They have to have what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and it's about power and control. Pretty much no self-esteem.
Great, thank you. Judge
Right.
Landry.
Sorry I was late. I had first appearances this morning, so I just finished my report. My name is Joe Landry. I'm the judge at Municipal Traffic Court as well. Pretty much track the same track as Judge Shea. He and I ran together in 2009, and he was elected to the traffic court bench. I was elected to the municipal court bench. Matter of fact, I stepped in and took over his dad's docket, who was the subject of my grudges, talking about John Shea, who was kind of the innovator in municipal court. I had been practicing in municipal court really since 1981 as a defense lawyer in traffic and municipal court, and then in 2000 I came on with the city attorney's office as a prosecutor in municipal court. And I was assigned to Judge Early's section, and we handled domestic violence at that time. Mike Groetsch was in that section of court, so I've worked with Mike from 2000 until, when did you retire?
2017.
So for 17 years, I worked with him in I guess, my court or Sean's court. And I gotta say, in my opinion, he's the expert in the city. He wrote the book, literally. And yeah, well, books with an S. We also at that time had the luxury of Dr. Perry. And we'll probably talk about her in a little bit, I guess. I'm just here to listen and comment. But anyway, I think the power and control wheel, if y'all are familiar with domestic violence, you know about the power and control wheel. And that's what I used to always just start an analysis on a case with, is to distinguish, like Judge Shea said, a situational battery where you might have disagreement and it gets to be a push or something, as opposed to the power and control wheel where the thumb is on there. And it may not be physical. So often, it's not physical. You can't wear that dress. I told you not to wear that. I told you you can't go here. What are you doing hanging out with those people? All of that stuff, just mind games. I'm sure there's a technical name for mind games, but you understand what I'm talking about. It's the power and control. That is the root cause of domestic violence. It's not the occasional, whoever, husband, wife, man, woman, spouse, whatever, comes in and you have an argument, you push them, whatever. That's not necessarily domestic violence. Could be, but not necessarily. So I always like to distinguish between those types and the ones that may not even involve physical contact, which in my opinion is much more serious because they're long-standing, they're chronic, and
Thanks, Judge.
want to solve it.
Jay, if I just may say one more
Yeah.
thing. You know, Mike talked about it, the amount, the numbers that women that were actually killed by abusive husbands, boyfriends, whatever it may be. And you can look at the track of the law is that people started finally paying attention. And unfortunately, a lady by the name of Gwen, I don't know what her last name is, had to die before the legislature enacted the Gwen's Law, which now allows judges to hold batterers, if the situation allows, to hold them without bond pending the trial. Because so many times they would set a bond, they'd make bond, and they'd go back, and they were mad because the girlfriend or the wife put them in jail, and so they go back and cause more harm or maybe death. And so it's taken a while, but people are finally realizing how bad the situation of domestic violence is. And we're now, you know, you can see there's so many people that devote their careers to it, that it's long overdue. And you know, last year there were 2 or 3 deaths in this city where the NOPD didn't respond timely, and hopefully the new police chief will rectify that. I think it was 12 hours on one case, and by the time they got there the next day, the guy went out and killed the woman. So we recognize that that's a problem, but you know, we as advocates and judges, we can only do so much. We need everybody involved in order to get a handle on this.
Thanks, Judge. Here's how we're going to proceed. First, let me give you a brief overview of what our panel members are going to say in their particular areas. And Liza prepared this. Liza, thank you very much. Mike is going to first discuss the perpetrators. Then Dr. Graves will discuss the victims. Then Judges Shea and Landry will explain how they address, the court system addresses both the perpetrators and victims within the judiciary. And then Joe would discuss the issues of treatment, pro and con. Let me ask a question for all panel members, and whoever wants to just answer the question, just raise your hand. Then after that, I'm going to ask specific questions of each of you in your different areas of expertise. So my question to all of you, what do you see as some of the most important things for people affected by domestic violence in Southeast Louisiana today?
The best advice I can give to a victim, because very often we'd have them in my office at court, and they would say, the kids don't know what to do. They're sleeping. So very politely, I would advise them that kids aren't sleeping, they only pretend to be. And I would advise them, if you can't, for whatever reason, get out for yourself, get out for your children. Because if you don't, unfortunately, domestic war zones become incubators for emotional imbalance. Domestic war zones become where seeds of dysfunction are planted. And the fact is, if you destroy the bonding age of a child's life, you make it very difficult for him or her to grow into a real healthy, emotionally, male or female. Typically what happens when you destroy that bonding stage, the little boys become adult batters. The little girls become adult victims. So the best advice I can give to any victim, if you need motivation, to get out, do it for your children and focus on them. I worked in court long enough to see second generation batters and second generation victims. They would come in and I'd see the last name, but I'd see junior violence. I handled daddy 20 years before, and it was almost predictable that those kids were going to be damaged in one way or the other. Ladies and gentlemen, a broken home is better than a violent one. A child without a father is better than one who abuses the mother. And so basically, I would tell the victim, be proactive, and we would refer them to the Justice Center. We had a wonderful psychologist working in the courtroom with us, Dr. Perry, and she had a team of social workers that would, handle the victims in a very gentle way and in a very nurturing way. But anyway, to sum it up, the best advice I give to a victim, if you need motivation, think about your kids, get them out.
One of the things that I would like to say to survivors of domestic violence is that it's not your fault, first of all. And if you feel that something is wrong, then it is wrong. And if you feel that it's domestic violence, it is domestic violence. As was stated earlier, domestic violence does not discriminate. So it doesn't matter where you work, what you do, it doesn't matter your race, your ethnic background, none of that matters. I've been working at the New Orleans Family Justice Center. I've come across people that I know personally that you don't know what's going on in people's homes. So it does not discriminate. And I did list some red flags that I'd just like to go over. I'll talk about some resources further down. But some of the red flags are if someone wants to move too fast in a relationship and it's making you feel uncomfortable, you're feeling uncomfortable for a reason. If someone seems too good to be true, if they're over flattering you constantly, you're feeling that way for a reason. If someone strangles you or tries to just choke you when you're arguing, that's a really bad sign because strangulation leads to murder. That's the next step. It's just showing that if I wanted to, I can kill you. If someone is isolating you from your family and friends, you're spending too much time with your girlfriend or your friends, or you're spending too much time by your mother's house or your friend's house, that's a problem because if those are things that you have already been doing before you met that person, and now all of a sudden you're spending too much time and they're trying to keep you away from your friends and family, that's a red flag. If they want you to stop doing the hobbies that you've been doing, or quit your job or quit school, those are red flags. If they're being very controlling and possessive. If you're saying that you're going to your friend's house and they're texting you to make sure that you're at your friend's house, or they're FaceTiming you to call to see, well, let me see, the background to make sure that you're really where you said that you were going to be, those are red flags. If someone is just too overly jealous of every little thing, if you always look nice and you put on cologne or perfume, or you put on nice clothes, if that's something that you always do and now all of a sudden it's a problem because they think that you're doing it for someone else, those are red flags that you should be looking out for. If someone takes no responsibility for their past relationships, if their past relationships always ended because of the other person, that's a red flag because this person is perfect, so why have they been in all of these failed relationships? Those are things that you should be looking out for. If you have a slight disagreement and that person rages out of control, then that's a red flag. But in private, but then around other people, they're very charismatic and everyone likes that person, those are red flags. If they own a weapon and you've seen a weapon and you've gotten into an argument and then they pull the weapon out just to set it out so that you can see it, those are red flags because now it's like a subtle threat. I have this weapon and if I wanted to, I could use it. If this person just can't imagine you not being in their lives or imagine seeing you with someone else, those are red flags and things that you should look out for. So I just wanted to list some red flags, and as we get further down, I'll talk about more resources and other steps that you could possibly take.
Well, unfortunately, as a judge, we only see the person when they've battered someone. And so they're in the criminal system. And what I learned over the years and through listening to professionals is that a one-size approach is dangerously antiquated because we can't treat everybody the same. Not every batter, every situation, every batter that comes before is the same as every other batter. And that's where the professionals come in. We do the initial assessment. We make this determination, and it's listed. Mike listed it in 3 categories, and I'll let Mike talk a little more about them. But as I mentioned earlier, it's called the situational abuser. That's where you're out with your wife and you maybe have too much to drink, and she tries to get you from stopping drinking, and you grab her arm, or she grabs your arm, and the police are called because somebody thinks it's going to escalate. And so that person, when there's never been any history of any abuse, that's just a situational type of situation. The sporadic batterer happens more than it should only be once, but it hasn't risen to the level of what they call a serial batterer, which is someone who does it either emotionally, as Judge Landry talks about, or physically. And so, again, we rely on professionals to make recommendations. You know, the old approach of 26 classes, that doesn't work. One is that there's no way for us to track that they actually go into the classes, that they actually gain anything from the classes. So what traffic and municipal court has done is we're starting a community court, where we're gonna have an umbrella, we're gonna have all the outside agencies try to provide services in-house, because what we learned is that when we send them to these outside agencies, they don't go, they only go maybe one side of the 26. So if we have them in court where we're watching them and requiring them to be there on say given days to get the counseling or to get, you know, it's also for housing and for, you know, because a lot of the situational of batterers, it's, you know, as the doctor indicated, it's because of economic issues, it's because of alcohol abuse, it's because of you know, maybe jealousy or whatever it may be. And so we have to get to the root cause of that problem so we can address it, because we until we find out what's causing this person to batter, and it may be that he lived in a household of someone who did batter, but we can provide them maybe some help and maybe self-help to getting better through outside agencies. So again, that's the drawback of being the judge, that we only see when sometimes it's too late.
Thanks. Joe?
And I agree with a lot that you said. They fall off the grid. They go, they're gone, they may come, and that's probably one of the most frustrating pieces for me, is that they come once or twice and they're gone. St. Charles Parish does a very, very nice job of tracking. I get a lot of Lower Post, because there's not a lot down there, get a lot of my men from down those areas, and I send in a monthly report every month, beginning of the month, with the perpetrator's name, the number of groups that have attended, the number of groups that have been absent, the fees that I have set, because we do a sliding scale, and if they have a balance. So every month I send this in to St. Charles. To Orleans Parish, we send in, when they go to court, we fill out a form that says how many absences they have, how many that they've attended, if they're participating. We put it in an envelope, we sign our name on the back, and they're supposed to be submitting that. So, but they fall off the grid. It's a population that just feels that they're above the law, that they're not going to get caught.
They also feel they don't have a problem either.
Well, accountability is probably the single most difficult thing that, as a provider, I stick to. And you cannot get around not being accountable in my group. You're going to be accountable, and I will make sure you're accountable, and that you finally agree with me that you're accountable. So I am, like my Groetsch says, I'm not a bleeding heart social worker. I'm going to hold you very accountable. I did it with my students. I do it with the men in my group. I did it with my own children. You do the deed, you say you did the deed. That's just part of it. But they fall off, they don't complete, and if they get caught, then they get a bench arrest. But rarely, is my experience, they never do anything, or whatever it is that they come back. So it's ideally is to stay closely in touch with the courts. The courts in Orleans Parish are absolutely inundated with their dockets, so I can respect that. That would be part. And you know, Dr. Perry, at one time, a good while back, she was doing recidivism, and she was keeping, we worked very closely with Dr. Perry, and to find out who was coming, who wasn't coming, where they were in life. And then if I'm not mistaken, I think that it lost funding, and it fell apart. So,
I think it's 1,500 filings a year.
I down it, and it's every walk of life. It's from the CEOs to the emergency room doctors to the police to firemen. It knows no race. It knows no profession. But it is so prevalent. It's just a epidemic. And we really would be wonderful if we could get a plan where everybody is accountable. I kind of don't know about doing it within the courthouse, though. It's, yeah, it's
I
kind
just
of.
want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Did you see a rise in domestic violence during the pandemic? People home and drinking?
Yes. I did, absolutely. And, you know, you're living in, well, I think the reason is because you're living in close quarters. They're there anyway, they're the batterers. And I think that because they never went out, they were always in, they battered more severely. And the police were probably called more often by the neighbors than by the actual victims. So,
I'm gonna follow up with what Joe said about how this crime is what it is. It's a way of life, crosses all barriers. Give you a prime example. My youngest daughter was in preschool, and they had a community helpers day. This was before I was a judge, so I was there as a city attorney. Judge Shea was there as a judge, and the courtroom police officer was there as officer friendly to policemen. So we went around, and when the policeman had his opportunity to address the students, the teacher said, and I'm sure, you know, y'all have some contact with policemen, this and that. One of the little kids raises his or her hand, I don't remember, child, male or female student. These are like under 4 years old. Raised, yeah, when daddy hits on down, the police come. Silence in the room, put off, I mean, this is like a, you know, it wasn't a field trip, but kind of like a field trip. They had special people coming into the classroom, video cameras are going, the teacher stood up, everybody hushed the cameras, turned off the cameras, no film. And it was traumatic for the adults in the room. I'm sure it was for the children as well, you know. But that's kind of a deal where everyone is touched, and it doesn't have to be the victims or the batterers that are affected, as Mike said. The families, it goes up and down, because when parents are involved in either counseling or jail or court, the kids need place. It's just so disruptive, and it's a bad thing to teach the kids. And I remember when we had second generation defendants coming through, I was a judge when Mike was handling those cases for the court. And it's, you know, what I'm doing right now, you just look at it and shake your head, but we really need to do more than that.
Mike, let me ask you these questions, two questions. Can you discuss the prevalence of domestic violence in America? You touched on that, the statistics that you gave us. And also, tell us about profiles of batterers. What do they do? Why do they do what they do?
First of all, the magnitude is not comprehensible. In the 1970s, what was known as the battered women's movement started, and there was a sociologist by the name of Dr. Murray Strauss. He was a father of domestic violence statistics. From his research, he determined there was approximately 1.8 million women in the country each year who was battered by their husbands or boyfriends. The Justice Department jumped in with some statistics, and they suggested it was 900,000. And then there were two other credible researchers that suggested, no, there's 2 million, there's 3 million. So what those numbers tell us is that to really determine how many women are battered each year, it's really perceptually evasive. But what you know is profound. Now, what's more empirical is homicide statistics. The Justice Department and a couple other agencies keep very close numbers on not only homicide, but what type. And they determined many years ago that there was approximately 3 to 4 women per day murdered in the U.S. by men who should have been protecting. 3 or 4 a day, that's 1 every 6 to 8 hours of every day of every week of every month of every year. And basically what those numbers fall down over the last 40 years, it's somewhere between 900 and 1,300 per year. That's considerable. But what I'm not seeing in those statistics are secondary victims. Not that they're less important, but they're caught up in the rage of the batterer. He not only shoots or kills his spouse, he kills the children, he kills, in some cases, the police. Now when I look at that, police and military training and military gear, and 1 every 90 days is killed in America by one of these cases when they call on a disturbance. That's how dangerous this thing is. I'd like to comment on the children. I did Google research. I'm writing a 3rd book on the subject, and on Google I put man murders family, and I put the state. It was unbelievable what I was pulling up. The headlines over and over again. Man kills his wife, his mother-in-law, and 4 children. Then I'd go to another state. Man kills his wife, a police officer, and 5 of his children. Then I'd do another search. And the interesting thing, I didn't even recognize until I started doing this research recently, how often he commits suicide. But he always takes the children with him. That's how much power and control he wants. He doesn't want to leave them in his life. He wants to take them with him. I'm very, very disturbed that in Texas, just 3 weeks ago, a guy was convicted for shooting his wife in the head 3 times with a rifle. She took a video as he shot her. The all-female jury heard it. All-female jury, you think that would favor the prosecution? They gave him a 10-year sentence, and he's eligible for parole in 5. Shame on Texas. Louisiana ranks 5th in the nation relative to men who kill women. 5th in the nation. Shame on Louisiana, because recently they passed legislation where at 18 years old, a guy can go get a gun now, carried concealed, no training, no permit. What do you think that's going to do to the domestic homicide rate in Louisiana? Just watch, because I'm going to be watching it. It is really shameful, it really is. So Louisiana isn't unique. Texas isn't unique. The battered woman's movement in the 70s is kind of like an afterthought at this point. And hopefully we can have enough meetings like this, we can create some momentum where people get interested again, because as I said before, women lives matter, but when you look at a lot of systems around the country, you wouldn't think so. When they do the profile. In terms of the profile of who these men are and who they're not, I remember when I worked in Judge Shea's father's court, John Shea. The first few years, I handled about 3,000 to 4,000 domestic cases involving domestic perpetrators. And I started noticing right away in those 2 or 3 years, they weren't all one and the same. They had a lot of differences in terms of what the victim would say they have done to the victim over a period of their marriage or relationship. Category 1 perpetrators, victims would say, Mr. Groetsch, it never happened before. Well, I thought that was denial. But sometimes I would have that validated by their children, by their friends, by neighbors who may be with them, that this guy was a pretty good guy. But something's going on, and I'll never forget the case. The first case I saw like this, they said his son had died, his 8-year-old son. The son came in and said, Dad, let's play ball. And he said, I don't have time now, go out and play with Frank or whoever. I'll be out there in a minute. He got run over by a truck and a football went to the the street. The father and the mother was grieving to death, literally. And one day they acted inappropriate to each other, but he ended up getting arrested. Category 1 batters, as Judge Shea said, was situational. They're not typical of what you see. In fact, I'll be honest, I don't even label them as batters. I label them as situational abusers. When I look at category 2, the victim would say, well, he's hit me 2 times in the last 15 years, but mostly it's emotional abuse, psychological abuse, power and control issues. But he's never really hurt me at all, but he has slapped me and knocked me down a couple of times. Well, that's not reflected with serial battery. Those are the ones, by the way, who are most treatable. In fact, those are the ones I used to refer to Joe Ballanco, because yes, a lot of it's learned behavior, but I always say if you superimpose some psychopathology over learned behavior, you got a real problem you got to address. And clinically, I think Joe is the best in the field. So basically, category 1, situation abusers, they simply need to go into treatment, not the batterers and intervention groups. They need individualized treatment for whatever trauma caused them to act atypical. Category 2s, perfect for the batterers and intervention group, because in most cases they won't seriously harm the victim. They can, but in most cases they won't. Serial batterers, category 3. Serial batterers are the most dangerous men who walk and stalk the streets and homes of America. They are the ones that did that to 50,000 women. The problem I'm having is for my entire professional career, I promoted the term serial batterer to define men who batter habitually. All the women in their lives, and they always will. I've never heard the word serial batterer come back to me. I haven't seen it very often in literature. But if we're going to recognize a serial rapist for what they do to women, they not only rape, but they batter and kill. If we're going to recognize serial killers, what they do to women, they not only kill, but they batter and rape. Then why don't we recognize men who habitually batter women, other than serial batterers? They actually not only batter, but they kill and rape more than the other 2 groups combined. And it's very, very disturbing that our society just won't go with that term, even though they go with the other 2 serial groups. What should you do with a category 3 serial batterer? He needs to be in jail. If he's not in jail, he's battering another woman. Just like the serial rapist. If he's not in jail, he's raping another woman. Just like the serial killer. If he's not in jail, he's killing other people. So I've always been a proponent in the court when I worked particularly with Joe Landry and John Shea, to use this typology in terms of what you do with each case. And I would always promote that a class 3 batterer should be in jail to keep them. Now, some cases, it's not as serious and you can't keep them for an indefinite period of time. You monitor, monitor, monitor. And when it gets out of line, you call them back and you revoke them. So anyway, what I did is I brought the model that I published many years ago called the Batterers Continuum, and it breaks these guys into the 3 groups. I now call the lethality assessment model, because that's what that is, lethality assessment model, the blame. Blame. B, batterers. L, lethality. A, assessment. M, model. And E, evaluate. So the blame model has taken over this, and I'm going to publish that shortly, to put these men in perspective so they can be handled appropriately by the courts.
Thanks. Mike talked to us about perpetrators. Dr. Graves, let's talk about the victims.
Well, some steps that I would recommend that victims take. First of all, you have to decide when the time is right for you to leave. No one can tell you when to leave. I know a lot of people say, well, why didn't they just leave? And I'm saying they because it's male and female. It's no discrimination. So why didn't they just leave? So you have to determine when the time is right for you to leave. Because when you make the decision to leave, that's the most dangerous time in your life. And they could attest to the statistics. When a survivor decides to leave, that's the most dangerous time because a perpetrator does not want to give up that control at all. So one of the recommendations would be to come up with a plan. I don't know if you keep the plan in your head, if you want to write it down somewhere that's safe, write it down or give it to a close family or friend, someone that you can trust, someone that you know will not give your plan up to anyone. Prepare a bag. You know, and all of these things are to be done secretively. Prepare a bag. Just pack some clothes just for you for a couple of days. You know, even if you have to take the bag to a close friend or family member, prepare a bag. Make copies of your vital records. That is so important. Your birth certificates, your driver's license, any vital records, insurance cards, anything that you may need. Make copies of it because it's a lot of times that we see survivors who leave and they just have to leave with the clothes on their back because there's a situation that they need to get out of right then and there. And they don't have these things. And it's hard to get those things, like you have to wait for copies of birth certificates, social security cards, insurance papers, anything. So make copies of those things and keep it in that bag. Also, spare keys. Like sometimes you may just have to leave. You may have to run out of the house and run down the street. If you have a spare key, you may be able to like sneak back or come back when you know they're not there and take your vehicle. Also, if you can save money, maybe keep some extra cash on the side or a debit card that your perpetrator does not know about, and just keep that debit card for emergency use and keep it in that spare bag. It's all about a plan and it's all about your safety. So that's the most important thing, coming up with a safety plan. And also, like, leave when it's unexpected. Like, it doesn't have to be doing an argument. Like, if you're in an abusive situation, you know, it happens. So it doesn't have to be doing an argument. It can be at a calm time when they're least expected that you're gonna leave. And you can, you know, just try to leave when they're least expecting you to leave. Now, I'm gonna focus on the New Orleans Family Justice Center as far as resources, because we're just a phone call away and a walk-in away. We accept walk-ins and we do take phone calls, and we have a 24-hour crisis hotline. I do have Lisa Landrum and Misty Fry with me here today, and we do have some of our cards with our information on it, but I'll give out the phone number. Our crisis hotline, the phone number is 504-866-9554. That's a 24-hour crisis hotline, and our agency is located at 701 Loyola Avenue. We're in the main post office tower building. You can just walk in to receive services. Some of the services that we do offer is we have an emergency shelter for anyone who is fleeing a situation or in imminent danger. We do have an emergency shelter. Once you come into the agency, we do a full intake, we assess your needs, and then we take it from there. It's on a case-by-case basis. We offer individual and group counseling. There's counseling for the kids as well, because we know that the kids are secondary victims of domestic violence, and they do what they see. So, you know, if they see, if they live in an abusive situation and there's no help, then they probably will grow up to be an abuser or perpetrator as well. We have, we do forensic exams. We have a clinic on site, and we do forensic exams. Sometimes someone may not want to go to a hospital, so it's a private setting where they can get a full forensic exam. We do offer legal services through SLLS. There's counseling, There's education and employment. We offer transitional housing. It's a plethora of services that we do offer, and we're a one-stop shop. We have all of our partners on site with us, so if someone comes in and maybe they didn't want to file a police report before, but they decide after coming in that they want to file a police report, then we do have some NOPD officers that are on site that'll come over and take the report, and you can file it, and it won't be as intimidating as maybe calling the police or going to police station. So the main thing is just decide when it's best for you to leave. You have to decide that you want to leave. No one can tell you when to leave. And I always denounce the question when someone says, why didn't they just leave? It's more to it than that. No one can tell someone when to leave. But if someone ever decides that they do want to leave and do want to reach out for some resources, then keep us in mind. We're just a phone call away, and you can always walk in. And like I said, we do have a shelter that is friendly for any survivor and their kids, private rooms. So I know when people think of shelters, they think of a big open room with just beds, but this is more of a private setting. You do have your own private room. Your kids are more than welcome to come along with you. I mean, we're not necessarily pet friendly, but we are emotional support and service dog friendly, so I'll just say it like that. But those are just some of the services. Oh, and some other things that we do offer as well is healing and wellness, because we know that trauma is in the body, and sometimes you need different things to help you release it. So we offer massages, acupuncture, Reiki, there's an art class, there's a drum therapy class. It's a lot of different things to help people just get out and express themselves, because when you just keep it all in and bottled up, it's bad for you. So we do focus on helping you to release some of the trauma that's within you as well.
Two questions. One, do you have any beds available now?
We always, if we don't have any beds available, then we will do a soft handoff. We will help you find somewhere. We're never just going to leave you without any resources.
How many places are out there? Like, they will find a place for you.
So some of the other shelters that we may work with is the New Orleans Women and Children Shelters. We do work with Eden House. We work with Metro. We work with the St. Bernard Shelter. So there are different shelters that are out there. And we come together, Catholic charities as well. Even if, let's say there's no space available in New Orleans, then if you are willing to go somewhere else, then we'll help you get to that location, as long as it's going to be a safe location for you when you get there.
How long can a person stay?
There's really no time period at our shelter. You can stay as long as maybe like up to 45 days. So what we do at the shelter, when you go to the shelter, your needs are assessed. We do have a housing program as well. So if you're at the shelter and it turns out that you need a form of more permanent housing, then we do have 2 transitional apartment units that we can place someone in. So once you're at the shelter and you're ready to begin searching for a more permanent house, we would move you from the shelter to one of our transitional housing locations, which is called our annex. And they're in our agency colors, which is purple and teal. So we have annex purple and we have annex teal. And you stay there and you work with a housing specialist that assists you with finding housing that's safe for you in the area that you choose and rent that you could afford. And we assist you with your rent for up to 6 to 9 months, maybe tops. It depends, it's a case-by-case basis, until you can take it over and pay your rent on your own.
It's all confidential as well.
All of our information is confidential. We never can say that this person was in our agency. Even when I came across some people that, I knew personally, They spoke to me first, and I acknowledged them because they spoke to me first, but I would never go out and say, guess who I saw, today in the agency. And this was someone, I had just seen at the hair salon, we were laughing and talking under the dryer, and I did see a bruise, but she was telling everybody how she fell, but then she came into the agency like that following week with more bruises and just crying. And when they called me over to talk to her, I didn't even know who she was because she had a hat on and she pulled down, and she was like, I know Trashanda, we go to the same hair salon. And when she pulled up her hat, I was surprised, but it happens. It does not discriminate. Like, you never know what someone is going through in their home, and you just don't know. So, even though I did know someone, we offer them the same services that we would offer anybody else. It's non-judgmental. We're not gonna say, well, why didn't you leave the first time that it happened? It may take someone at least 7 times before they decide to come to our agency. We get calls all the time. Someone may call us and say, well, I know this person who is being abused. Can you all reach out to them? We cannot reach out to someone. We have to let them take the first step to come in to get the assistance. All it takes is for them to make the first step, and then once they make the first step, we can offer all of the resources that we have. But we can't, someone may know, everybody may know someone, but until that person is ready to come in and receive services, only thing you can do is just talk to them and encourage them, but you cannot make someone do something. They have to be ready to make that next step. And once they do, we are here to help them and offer the resources that we have available.
Judges, let me ask you both this, Judge Shea and Judge Landry. Can you walk us through the legal steps? If someone's been abused, what do they do? Do they call the police first? What are the legal steps? If they can walk us through the legal steps. Do you call the police first?
Well, there's 2 approaches in the city of New Orleans, and I'm sure a lot of jurisdictions have this. Since we have both a criminal and a civil bench, if the police are called and someone's issued a summons, which they should not be, they should be arrested if there is a sign of domestic abuse. The other way is if you don't want to call the police, you can go to civil court, and there's a civil protective order that you can swear out a complaint in civil court, and they can have a hearing where the civil court judge decides whether or not there's enough evidence to issue a protective order. In the meantime, while you're trying to get away or trying to get yourself away from the abusive relationship. But what I think in any instance is that judges just need to take a hardline approach to habitual and serial batterers. And unfortunately, as my jurisdiction is only up to 6 months, so even if someone is the most heinous batterer is convicted on a certain charge, the most I can give him is 6 months in jail. And so, and that really begins with where the police department files the paperwork. It files with the district attorney. If they send it to municipal and traffic court, then the most I can give them is 6 months in jail. If there's a battery with strangulation or threat of serious injury, then they can be tried in felony court, and obviously the jail time is more serious. So I always say just make sure you call the police, and they're supposed to respond. We've seen evidence that doesn't happen, infrequently in New Orleans. As frequently as it should, but the best thing is always call the police and get them involved.
I'll just ditto that. That's the fastest way and most immediate way is to place the call. It makes a record at the call center, and it's documented. Going to civil court is a little more prolonged. There are associated expenses with that. You may even need you don't need a lawyer, but a lot of people hire lawyers to do that. But there are people over there, self-help desk and things like that, that are able to assist pro se litigants. And you can get costs waived if you're going in and filling out an informal home affidavit. Generally speaking, there are costs associated, and it's not as fast as the criminal procedure. On the criminal side, as Judge Shea said, there is the difference between the misdemeanors and the felonies. One says strangulation, and sometimes they would come to municipal court, and we we would see things, and would have the DA take another look, and they would get transferred over to criminal court and prosecuted as a felony, which didn't really appear at first blush, you know, the night of the incident or whatever. But, so that gives the DA and gives the judges the arena to prosecute domestic violence as felonies when the facts suggest. And obviously that leads to longer potential jail times.
I used to see a lot in the news when Leon Canizero was the DA about women would call the police alleging domestic abuse, and then they would not follow up with that. What kind of repercussions are there, number one, but number two, can they be forced, if they reconcile with their spouse, can they be forced then to go ahead and proceed? And there's always a balance there because for obvious reasons. When you're convinced, as a judge, okay, if you're convinced that a woman is being battered, we're talking about male, female, we're talking about special hours, and you're convinced of that. But if the victim comes before you, goes to your city attorney, and says, I'm not going to testify, you can't make me testify.
We,
What do you do?
years ago, before I was elected, I went to a domestic violence seminar. Was it outside of New York City? But anyway, it doesn't matter. And that was when they were just getting into victimless prosecution for that exact reason. When you can use other evidence other than the victim's testimony. But getting back judge to judge, we're all innocent until proven guilty. So I'm not convinced until the evidence is put forth, right? But yeah, you get a gut.
It's scary, but again, we're trying to reach out to everyone to know what the system's all about, what resources are available. I see Kyra here from Bean House, she's going to speak in a few minutes about additional resources, but it's scary for them about the legal process.
Well, you know, when I first started, and Mike and Joe can attest to this, is that a victim could come to court and swear out an affidavit of abuse against, the police wouldn't have to be involved. And it would be a summons, and they'd issue the summons, and then they charge the guy, and invariably, under that premise where you can bring a case to court, the woman within days would say, I want to withdraw the charges, because there would be pressure from the batterer. You can't leave me, she was afraid, you know, the economic aspects, I'm gonna take the kids, you know, I'm gonna burn the people, whatever it may be. And so we kept doing a lot of cases where there was no prosecution. I think my dad and Mike changed that to where you could no longer file an affidavit in the clerk's office. It had to originate as either an arrest or an affidavit by an arresting authority to sort of prevent that, because when they did it that way, they left and went back home. There was no intervention by the advocates to make sure that what she alleged was happening wasn't actually still going on while she was awaiting a trial date. So this way, if we had him in court, then the advocates can talk to the victims and provide the services that we've all talked about up here. And so that was just a way that the system is sort of evolved to protect women and protect the...
And Mark, if I go back 15 years ago, I recall your father when he was sitting, we had a victim that would not cooperate. She wouldn't even show up, maybe, for good reason. I mean, these are real dangerous cases for a victim. And when they're estranged and their perpetrators are being prosecuted, it gets more dangerous. So some of them want to just hide away. So we were out of that, and we did what was called victimless prosecution. Now, I'm assuming it's still done in some cases, and that's why the police intervention, where they gather the evidence, make a good report, talk to neighbors, maybe the neighbor comes.
Take photographs. Photographs.
Photographs were so important. We would take victims' bruises and photograph them when she first came in, and we would do them a week later because they changed. I mean, when they first happened, they're a little red. A week later, they're black, and they really show up well. So we took photographs at different levels. But victimless prosecution, of course, gathered all that. So Judge Shea is right. If a woman came into the clerk's office, brought an affidavit, you lose that information or that ability.
Joe, Your turn now. What methods do you employ to help batterers change their behaviors? Can they be saved? We're here about the cycles of this.
It's a very interesting question because Mike has placed all these batteries in categories. And unfortunately, I get from 1 to 3, I get guys right out of Angola. I get them across the board. So, and I find it very interesting that you're gonna call it blame, because blame is one of the biggest issues of accountability. It's always the woman's fault. So we do the Duluth model, which is probably one of the most widely recognized models. But that's over time, and we have some other really good models out that are nationally recognized as well. So to say you follow one method of working with them would be, you just can't do that. We teach cognitively, we try to teach morally. We teach a lot of parenting, kind of tongue-in-cheek parenting, because the children really are the silent victims. Everybody forgets about the kids out in the world, and those are the ones who deserve to have a safe environment. We talk a lot about stealing the childhood of children. So it's a lot of, we teach a lot of different avenues of trying to get to these men. Like Mike said, if they're a sociopath, narcissistic sociopath, forget it, because they're not rehabilitative. And it kills me to say it, because I'm supposed to come to discipline and say, everybody can be helped in the whole wide world, but you just can't help everybody. And so my target in this population are the children. And if you have ever taken the time to listen to the 911 calls of children while their moms are being beaten, is horrific, unbelievable. We use a lot of different methods, and a lot of times you have to kind of, you have your lesson plan all worked out, and then all of a sudden you have to change your whole avenue, because these guys come in with other stuff, and you have to address it, because it's really a commonality too, that if there's one suffering with this, there's going to be some other ones too. Trying to explain to these men that there is a continuum of control, that you don't just go from 1 to 100 in a flash. You go through many, many steps before you get to that 100. But to teach awareness, teach just what happened before you got home, what happened at work. Because there's going to be situations, there's going to be buttons that they constantly talk about. Yeah, they pushed my buttons at work, and I got home, and I knew exactly what I was going to expect, and then it just starts. It just starts from there. But there's always a continuum from an event to your thoughts, to your feelings, to your actions. That in my experience, to teach that is one of the most important pieces in trying to help a guy recognize, to become more familiar with his behavior, to understand what he's doing, and what he's doing to his family, what he's doing to his children. Because we always say, children are so resilient. You know, they're not. They carry that all through their adulthood. They carry it with trust. I mean, who do you trust more than your mother and your father? Or if you're growing up being raised by your grandparents, or your aunt and uncle, your brother. That significant person is the person that you trust. And you can't trust them any longer. And they're doing these, hurting you and people you love. It carries through all through their adulthood. Relationships become extremely hard for them. So it's the children that deserve to be safe. They deserve to know what's going to be expected when they get home. That it's an okay place to bring their friends. It is.
Following up on that, you never believe what the button is. You read these police reports and it's literally, where was the TV remote? Bam, bam, bam. Where's my dinner? Bam, bam, bam. The food's cold. Bam, bam, bam.
It's all you got.
Obviously, refusal of sex. Bam, bam, bam. Just, it's,
I
so.
can get it down the street now, so why do I need you? So do what I want to do. It's a lot.
And obviously, there's something that happened before, the food was cold.
Exactly.
But they just need to, like you say, be taught how to think clearly and analytically.
Every time we present anything, and I always remind the guys in the very beginning of the meeting, we do this for awareness. To be more aware that this can lead to this, or it can lead to this, or where you, what were those buttons? And those are your buttons, and only you can control those buttons. Nobody else can control them for you. People are gonna push them all the time, but they're yours.
I read something somewhere, and I'm quoted, and the person that wrote this is, we cannot predict in absolutes. The plan is subjective in design, it can only forecast in probabilities. And I think that's the approach that we've chosen to take, is that each individual person may not fit within this treatment plan. You have to look at what's going on in their lives in order to be able to kind of form a plan that's gonna stop it from becoming a serial pattern.
And can I add just this one thing too? I'm very, very sorry, I didn't say this in the beginning. My program is a diversion program. And the guys are usually, have a 6-month probation. And in lieu of going to jail, they come to my group. So everybody that comes in my group is court ordered.
But it's diversion after a plea or before a plea? They've pled and they're trying to avoid jail.
They're trying to avoid jail.
Diversion
And-
usually is
Yeah,
we-
pre-adjudication.
But it's used as a diversion.
Probation, it's probation.
Exactly.
Right, it's probation.
So this is the premise of why my group was developed, that my
Yeah.
position, and in the state statute is because and they try to divert them to me in hopes of keeping them out of jail.
I think that's important, whether it be diversion or probation.
Yeah, so getting back to the legal system and terminology, and really, well, I don't know if we had too many diversions for domestic violence, but let me just say this, that this is some of the hottest cases that we in municipal traffic court handle. They keep me up at night, you sit up in the middle of the night, oh, geez, whatever. So, actually, I'm okay that they're in criminal court right now, because I can sleep a little better. But you just never know, and whenever there's a murder on TV, I run to court the next morning, it's 1 hours. I'm like, how many days? Yeah, that's 1 hour. And we're losing them now, this is kind of an aside, we're losing defendants in our court who are not involved in domestic violence. The shooting on the streets of the city of New Orleans is unbelievable. I think in 2023, I lost 3 defendants, 22-year-old kids, young adults, whatever you want to call them. I had a guy in court today, 22 years old, had a bandage on his hand. I said, what happened? Got shot. I can't get into the case, but he's never had a job in his life. Finished, I don't know, 11th, 12th grade. He didn't even know what grade he finished, highest grade he completed in school. So The street is tough, but I guess the house is even tougher because these are the people that are supposed to be the loved ones, and we're seeing the domestic violence there. So it is a hot button item that keeps us all awake at night, thinking about these cases and never get them off your mind. And so what we were talking about, I guess, diversion, and I'm starting to say that I don't know if I see any pre-adjudication diversions for domestic. Mike, do you remember those?
Yeah, class 3 should never be divorced.
Oh, no.
But they are.
But, yeah, I know that it's a dumping ground for
Yes,
therapists like Joe across the country. And I got a comment. She said somebody that met a sociopath, they should not be put in matters intervention. They need to be handled in terms of as much incarceration as you can give them. In some cases, it's only 6 months, but in some felony cases, it could be many years.
What we find is when they get out, they're even worse batters.
Well, that's the problem. You're not going to change him any more than a serial batter. And basically, these men are the worst nightmare for a therapist. They're a clinical nightmare. And they get into a group, they control the group, they actually teach, as far as I'm concerned, class 2 batters a little better at battery. So they should not be in groups. They should be incarcerated. And one thing that the judge made in a comment, the batterer's continuum or the blame or any lethality assessment model, it's a linear model and it's fluid. In other words, it could be a class 1.3, 1.8, 2.5. In other words, you can't think in real concrete terms. You got to look at the fact they could differ in degree, even though they may be a class 2, they may be closer to class 3. So this is only a way to forecast. You cannot absolutely predict anything, but it's a good model because at least it puts things in perspective that courts can fully understand. You mentioned a study that was done by Dr. Perry. I worked with Lucille on the study, and my hypothesis was we only referred category 2s and category 3s. Category 1s we sent for individual therapy. But category 2s and 3s, I kept numbers that was in the 300 or 400 case range. And I determined that category 2s fell out of therapy 30% of the time. Even with us looking over their shoulder, the judge having the ability to incarcerate them, 30% of the class 2s didn't finish. When it came to class 3s, it was 70% didn't finish. So I don't know how many times in a court we would ask for a revocation hearing and do what was necessary. But the lack of motivation with these men is incredible. They try to start a BA program around the country like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Batters Anonymous. As far as I can see, you don't have a single chapter anywhere in the country. They don't have motivation. And I remember when a friend of ours first started offering batters intervention groups, he put flyers out, went to all the agencies, said, refer these men to me, and I'll do groups. And guess what? It never happened. Not one came until the courts got involved and they were mandated to go. So they lack such motivation, even class 2s. But I think class 2s, in some cases, are treatable. They sometimes have remorse. Yes, most of it's learned behavior, with the exception of the class 3s where psychopathology is paramount. They have severe personality disorder. When you put that over learned behavior, you very often have a killer.
Thank you all. When Leslie and I first talked about this, she had a student who was experiencing this, and so she felt it very important to educate everybody about resources that are out there. We've learned the cause, we've learned about the perpetrator, we've learned about the victim, we've learned about the court process. But as Dr. Gray's talked about, there are a number of resources that are available. Her group, Family Justice Center, she says they referred people to Eaton House, Caravan Car, who's who started Eden Houses here, and she'll say a few words about that. So we know what the problems are, but let's focus now on the last remaining time that we have on resources and on what resources are available. So Cara, if you could speak for a couple of minutes about Eden House. Actually, that student that lies ahead, we contacted Cara on Eden House, and they immediately were willing and able to accept it. Unfortunately, the student didn't show up. Okay, but so Cara's going to tell you a little bit about Eden House, and then we'll open it up for questions and resources.
I'm Cara Vandekar, the founder and president of Eden Centers for Hope and Healing. We started 13 years ago as Eden House, and we now have 2 long-term shelters and an emergency shelter that is connected with an LCMC hospital. We have a floor of a hospital building, and we're expanding to a 2nd floor of a hospital building. This is Jennifer Best. She is our CEO, and she is also a licensed clinician, so she comes at the work from really serving and knowing the women we serve. We offer services to survivors of human trafficking. So there's often overlap between domestic violence and human trafficking. The domestic violence wheel of power and control is often how traffickers use power and control to traffic their victims. So, but not just domestic violence. So if it moves into being forced to have sex or participate in sex acts for payment, the person doesn't have to get paid, but money or something of value needs to trade hands. Rent, drugs, alcohol, and if that's the case, then you would be considered a human trafficking survivor for purposes of Eden House, or even if you are in prostitution and you think you're there voluntarily, what we found is that most adults in prostitution started out actually being trafficked as children, but once you were trafficked as a small child, there's almost no way out because you haven't gone to school, you've probably been disconnected from your family, you don't have a job, you don't have your own income, and so getting out of prostitution is very, very difficult. So there does need to be an element of sale for sex, but once you are eligible for our services, we have an emergency shelter, we have people who come in the middle of the night, we are connected to an LCMC hospital, we have 1 hospital floor and we're expanding to a 2nd hospital floor and offering services to men. There are very few shelters and services for men who have been trafficked. And we offer at the emergency shelter, it's emergency and transitional. You can stay up to 90 days, and we help transition you into long-term housing. At our 2 long-term houses, we have room for 16 women who can stay up to 2 years, and we help with everything that a survivor needs for recovery. But my favorite part is that we're based on the model that love is the strongest force for change. So really, unless we can provide love and support and respect from the minute a woman walks through the door, can we really start to give her a safe environment where she can take advantage of all the services we offer? Because at the end of the day, it's her recovery, and that's a really hard job to heal, and we can't heal for them. It is a big job. All we can do is try to walk with people and offer support and love and respect and help them go through that healing process in a safe place. So I'll let Jen just say a couple things about all the services we do offer, and then I have brochures. I'm happy to pass them around, and whoever wants to take one.
As Cara mentioned, we are a recovery home for trafficking survivors. We reach out to Family Justice Center often. We work really well together. We do have 3 locations, and the thing that I like about our model is that we follow our survivor throughout their continuum of care, throughout the rest of their lives. So they can come in from emergency situations, we can get them stabilized and safe, provide an atmosphere for them to start to heal, and then if depending on what route they want to take, whether we connect them with housing through Family Justice Center, we're still with them, or if they want a long-term program, but it doesn't even end there. We're there for the rest of their lives. So they can access our services forever. We know that our healing journeys go like this, and so there's times where you need support a lot, and then there's times where you don't need as much support, so we're there throughout
Does anybody have any questions of any panel member about this latest with Eden House? Do you have any questions at all? Yes, ma'am.
A lot of times, the abuser will threaten his wife or girlfriend that if you leave me, I will torture and kill the dog or cat or whatever. Is there something that helps people like that?
Emotional support animal.
Well, no, I think that is one of the telltale signs of a domestic battery. When they start kicking the dog, and that's another red flag.
Right.
It's a level 3 usually.
Absolutely.
Sociopathic. Yes.
Yes, he's a sociopath.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Erica Benson. I work with Person Care, Community Health Clinic. I wanted to ask, because Ms. Joe made a point about the kids in reference to domestic violence. I'm a child of domestic violence, and it does stay with you throughout your life. It is a process to get over the things you see in a child. But my question for the panel is, what is your youngest battle for the judges that you had to come before you? What's the age?
We started at 18 years old. We did.
And did you ever have 18-year-old batters that come?
Have we had 18-year-old batters in the court?
Yes.
I had an amazing experience. I was reading the cases one day, looking over the defendants' names and their history. And I saw a guy with the same name that I handled for years in Judge Shea's court, Judge Shea's court. And I was preparing my assessment, preparing everything, and then I realized he had little or no history. I said, this can't be the same guy. It wasn't, it was his son. And then I saw Junior. I look in the courtroom, there's a dad sitting there with the son. So again, that's the intergenerational transmission of domestic violence. See, the 18-year-old, he was only 18 or 19, had picked up every trait, every behavior of the father. He was repeating it. And I'll just never forget, because when the 18, 19-year-old stood before Judge Jones Shea, the father got up and started screaming. They held him in contempt of court. I mean, he was just like his dad, you know. And so I always tell victims to try to motivate them. If you're thinking twice about staying, please focus on your kids. Take them to a therapist, let them talk about this. And hopefully they'll grab hold, because you know how mothers are protective of their children. And denial usually seeks in, well, the kids don't know what's going on. Like I said, I always told them they're not sleeping, they're performing. And the damage to a child, as everybody knows here, can be catastrophic, and it can be beyond repair in some cases, not all cases. Some kids are more resilient than others, you know.
You know, what I have noticed a lot in my groups, just in the last year, is child endangerment and the children being removed away from the battle. So, yes.
The state's taking
Yes.
them.
And they stay with the mother, but they're removed, and child endangerment has become really big in, it's just the last year. Well, you're correct. And,
You know, just one step further, the Supreme Court has finally realized that how important domestic violence is becoming issues. We now have protective orders that if we make a defendant sign one, we have to register it with the Supreme Court, and they keep a protective order registry. And in that protective order, they have to, if they have firearms, they have to give up their firearms. If they're caught with a firearm while they're under this protective order, they face federal, God bless you, face federal prosecution for violation of this protective order. So it's grown, the protections for women have grown extensively, just from what we can do, but it's now into federal levels of protection. So you know, people are finally paying attention. I mean, it's been probably the last 10 years. So we have books that they give textbooks on all this, you know, what you do and how you go about it and how it's filed, and we have to send it to the Supreme Court, and it's registered, and, you know, I mean, so there's a lot more parties involved in this than just this little group of panelists.
And the feds are taking it very seriously. We were saying the number of indictments.
Yeah, I would refer to Judge Zainey.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of good laws have been put into place to protect that.
Yes, ma'am.
What percentage of your cases would you say receive a conviction for a protective order if there isn't any evidence of physical violence, where there is evidence of mental or emotional violence? And would they be considered level 1, and would they be sent to diversion to avoid them becoming victims, to avoid them becoming perpetrators of physical violence?
It would probably be level 2, emotional. Emotional abuse is unbelievable. The damage that is done, the erosion of self-esteem, the helplessness of the victim is just beyond comprehension. So they would definitely be, you know, at least a level 2, not a level 1.
I don't know about percentages, because those determinations are made by prosecutors with some guidance from the advocates who initially screen the cases, and based on Mike's level, determine where they are, and so they can push for diversion, which you see on the level 1. They don't call it that, I'm sorry. They call it situational abusers and not batterers, you know, but when you get to that level 2 and level 3, it's strictly the prosecution that pushes. And then it's the judges who look at their record and look at maybe some victim impact statements to make a determination whether it should be a 6-month suspended sentence or 6 months incarceration. But during that 6 months, we rely on the advocates because we know when that person has been put in jail for 6 months, he's coming out more mad than he was when he went in. And so during that 6 months, that's the crucial time that if the woman is going to get away from the guy, it needs to be done within that time frame, because he's going to come out mad that he's been away and he's looking to start swinging again. So there's a lot of moving parts that have to happen from the date of arrest and then conviction and then release from jail.
There's also states now that are starting to recognize that 6 months is not enough, that they're doing the full year of interventions or jail time. Just about the time and it's true, it's just about the time I feel like, you know, some of the guys that are coming, that are really coming. By the time 6 months hits, it seems like I'm really just getting started with them and really making, you know, progress.
In the Boston area, it's 52 weeks.
What's that?
It's 52 weeks in the Boston area in some
In
programs.
California, it's
And the problem is keeping them going to those meetings for a year is very difficult. It's
Yes.
not fiercely monitored. But to reply to the power control issues and the guy attacking the woman's self-esteem, part of the strategy is to start with identity. She don't know who she is, why she is, what she is. He's isolated her. And once he does that, he's got all the control. Now, the interesting thing is level 2s, they're not as physically abusive as they are in attacking her esteem, attacking her identity, power control. But given the wrong triggers like estrangement or a drug, episode or loss of a things like that can trigger 2s to look like 3s. The only difference they generically have is they're not as dangerous. And I'd like to say one thing in my closing. We think this is in different socioeconomic groups. And we feel it happens in other people's neighborhoods, in other cities, other communities. It don't happen in my neighborhood. Within 18 months of one another, in 8 blocks from my home where I raised my children, we had 3 men, all professionals, killed 7 members of their family. 2 were babies, 2 were teenagers, 2 were wives, 1 survived the stabbing, and 2 of the 3 committed suicide. They did what they did. These were all professional men. If they had anything in common, they were very obsessive compulsive. Everything had to be perfect. Because after the murders happened, I researched each case. But I guess my point is, there's nothing just happening in the other person thing. I can tell from experience.
Yes, sir.
So I guess this is more of a curiosity about how, since we live in a digital age, cyberbullying and cyber stalking, does that turn into a form of, is that just like verbal abuse, or does that, like, how does that correlate to domestic violence? Because it does get to a
Social
point.
media is bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Social media, there is a lot of, they see their girlfriend or their wives on social media. And it can really mushroom. Their text
Losing.
messages, the phone and social media are real big issues in domestic violence. Yes.
Like if someone is going on your social media page, like I said before, like if they're going through your phone and reading your text messages, or even going to like your Instagram page and seeing who's liking a lot of your pictures and acting out because of that.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. It's 2 questions. One question is for the judges, and then another question is for the panel. My first question is, I know there's a lot of speculation about the law and what is a law, what was not. So when somebody calls the police and the
So, we do offer training. We have gone out to different schools and worked with some of the coordinators to offer that type of training.
Can I ask what level are you, high school, college?
we're college.
College.
I'm gonna give you a good resource. I know Mike can't promote it, but I read this book. It's called He Promised and Stop. It was his first book.
Okay.
And it gives you a lot of what we talked about today, a lot of ways to just to kind of recognize it and kind of move from there. I found it on the internet. I don't think it's in production anymore, right, Mike?
Yeah, that was 25
Right.
years
But I
ago.
read it and I go back and use it as a reference guide. It's really been good. So it's called He Promised and Stop.
When the movement started in the 70s in America, the modern movement, because they've been moving throughout history. When it started in the 70s, it started gaining momentum in the 80s and 90s and early 2000, and training was done everywhere, every level of training. I mean, we were always speaking to a group or trying to share our insights with a group. And even though the movement has somewhat stayed in a certain degree, I don't think the momentum is there right now. And unfortunately, every time we see a domestic murder, people in this country are reactive, not proactive. Instead of saying, we got to get really back into this and start the training again. The media, for example, they always lack information. And the media was used back then as well in a very profound way. It was always in the paper, always on TV, what we could do to help women. I'd like to see it back there.
What I see is they report on it when it's too late. When the guy's went out and burned the house down with his 3 kids in it, and now they've charged the new girlfriend, because obviously she probably a batterer too, and he convinced her, you need to come with me while I go take care of some business. And so the media reports after the fact. They probably should have reported, some other ways of providing services. We lost our line. Any more questions? I'll take over for a second.
This was just awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you
I
all for
want
being
to
here.
add one little piece to what we've said. Domestic violence, it's very insidious. You don't marry or get together with a man, you know is going to beat you or emotionally abuse you. It happens, they're very charming, and it happens, and it happens very sneaky, but it's not, it's very insidious, just, it begins and starts, and before you know it, it's like, you're in it, it's like a web, and you can't get out of that web because of a lot of reasons. One, you love the man, you don't love what he does, but you love him. You know, where are you gonna go? Who's gonna take care of you? You've got your children, you've got, you know, your friends. What are your friends, you know, gonna say?
He's also.
And it's this big secret that you have nobody else. You have no friends. I'm the only one who is going to put up with your ugliness. I'm the only one that will be.
And as she said, and most times, like, you don't want to break up the family, you just want the abuse to stop. So, you know, someone may stay longer in hopes that it just stops, because they don't want to break up their family.
And one more little safety issue, and it was brought out by the doctor, it's, when you pack up, try not to keep that stuff in your house. For God's sakes, you have no idea how many of my men have found her little suitcase with all her stuff neatly hidden. So put it, do it, but put it somewhere outside of your home, yes. You gotta learn, safety is paramount, because once you leave,
Y'all
you
talk
are in
about safe
high
word
risk.
with the family members?
Yes.
Y'all talk about that?
Yeah, we do that with safety place, yes.
We do a safety plan too, for the men.
Have a safe word with a family member or a friend. You know, when you say that, then you know, they call it, because sometimes they'll break the phone, you can't call the police. You know, I mean, I know it used to be rip the phone off the wall, but, you know, everybody doesn't have that anymore, so it's, you know, break the cell phone, or so you can't call the police, and they've done that as well too. So have something where you don't do some sort of safe word.
And listen, Groetsch, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment, I'm here with my students, the CDYC program, and we wanted to come and learn, and I appreciate the information, especially in regards to young children. And you say something that was very profound. And Ms. Joe, you said that children are not resilient. Am I correct?
That's what I said.
And but we always say that.
We always say.
And then you made it clear to me that yes, they go through something, but they will remember and it will come up later.
Well, I hate to make reference to this, I'm raised the hand.
Yes.
You still live with those
Yes.
nightmares, right?
You testified to that. So thank you. And my students.
Another question, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm with Ms. Nelson's class, Ms. Nelson's class. Would y'all have workshops or stuff like that that would offer teachers to how to deal with domestic violence in kids and like how to go about your administration and how to handle this kind of stuff happening?
Agenda for Children Night, I think that's probably the entity that's the most likely to go on. It's Agenda for Children.
Agenda for children?
Yeah, they do a ton of ongoing professional development and resources for teachers and families.
But I'm sure there's things you look at it, kids, and you kind of see that there's something going on. You know, they used to be outgoing, all of a sudden they become very quiet, very introverted. You know, usually that's something that's happening at home that's changed the way this child acts. And I think maybe educators ought to be trained to be alerted to that, so they can sort of call in family services.
If there's any way that any type of behavior batterer can use to control his wife or girlfriend, it's through the children. I mean, that's the only control. If you leave me, you'll never see the kids again. If you get the kids, you'll never see support from the kids. Some of them say, if you leave me, I'll kill the children. I mean, the children are the ultimate act of power control. Some of these men, and also the three men that murdered their children in my family, they were all professional men. One of them was a chemical engineer, the other was an attorney, and the other was a very, very well-known contractor. And if you saw their home, one of them had Christmas decorations around his home across the street from the playground where he coached young kids. He killed his entire family. killed herself. And that was the attorney. The chemical engineer is still in Angola. He's still trying to figure out how to get out. He's made a bunch of appeals, and unfortunately, it hasn't happened. His wife survived. But if you ask me, could these men do this on a surface? Symbolically, I would say, don't look like it. Had I known them more intimately, I would have seen some OCD. Most of the men who killed are severe personality disorders. And again, Joe knows because she's got to try to handle them in groups. They really don't belong there.
Conrad, victims of human trafficking, do you all take them age 18 and older, and then Covenant House is a resource for younger children?
And we do referrals for anyone under 18. So, yeah, 18 and over is our.
We used to have a program at the municipal court. I took over when Judge Desiree Charbonnet retired. It was called Crossroads, and it was a court that strictly was for women charged with prostitution. And the Women with a Vision, I think, was involved in that. And they would take the women and educate them, try to get them jobs, housed. And there was an agreement with the city attorney's office that if they completed that 6-month program, that the city attorney would dismiss the prostitution charges against them. But now.
Is that still happening? I remember.
Well, the city's not writing those charges anymore.
I haven't seen a prostitution case in years.
With the manpower that they're putting there, they're directing their.
I would say that Eaton House was involved with some of that early on, even before Crossroads was started. I remember coming.
We worked with Judge Charbonnet, and we worked on changing some of the laws here in Louisiana, and been involved with for a long time, different aspects. We worked with Women with a Vision on some of our cross referrals.
Do we have any other questions? Because our time is 1 minute short of 2 hours. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Panelists. Thank you, guys.